Boom! We back up in that ass with some more science. Like that? All right. All right, guys. So I see a lot of confusion out there about health foods. We see data that says one thing is good in one study, and then another study, it's not so good. And I want to kind of help clear up some of the myths around so-called health foods and help you understand what the studies actually mean and how you might apply some of this information. All right, so when you're discussing any health claims or health food claims, there's three questions to always ask yourself to think like a scientist. And actually, I got these from an economist. I saw an interview with Thomas Sowell, who, my boy, he's awesome. I love Thomas Sowell. He's just got a very, getting away from the politics of things, he looks at things like a scientist would. So three questions he always asks when talking about economic policies is three questions I also ask when looking at research or evidence claims or any product claims. And the first one is, compared to what? Somebody says, this food burns fat. Compared to what? Okay. Are you saying that, like for example, there was a report a few years ago that dark chocolate had fat burning properties. Okay, compared to what? Can you just eat more dark chocolate and lose fat? Do the calories from dark chocolate not count? Compared to what? Second, at what cost? For almost everything there's a trade-off. And so you have to ask, if you're adding one thing, by default, you're taking something else out, typically. So what's the cost associated with that? And three, what's the hard evidence say? Okay, I get this all the time where people say, well, this product has so many studies to back it up. And then I actually go look at the studies. 80% of the time, the studies have nothing to do with the product, or they're completely misrepresented, misinterpreted, or the dosage is completely wrong. Okay, so let's take, for example, something like, I don't know, artificial sweeteners, because that's a hot topic right now. People say, oh, they're toxic to your gut microbiome. Okay, compared to what? Okay, well, compared to, I don't know, other sources of calories, maybe. All right, well, actually, they don't have calories, but maybe compared to other things. What's the hard evidence say? Well, if you look at these studies on artificial sweeteners, and I realize that that's one cult I haven't pissed off in a while, the anti-artificial sweetener cult, so we're about to go raw on them. If you look at the data on them, the data showing that artificial sweeteners cause health problems is either in animals using an extremely high dose, using cell lines, which was this microbiome study that came out a few months ago. They took E. coli and basically, for lack of a better term, in a petri dish, put massive doses of artificial sweeteners on them and found that it was toxic to those E. coli bacteria. No shit. If you take anything in a petri dish and get the concentration high enough, it's usually toxic. So the hard evidence, very minimal. And then also in terms of people say, well, there's some epidemiological research showing that people who are more overweight are more likely to take in higher levels of artificial sweetener. That's not causative, okay? So for that claim, for example, that artificial sweeteners are bad for you, there's not really much hard evidence to back that up, if any, okay? Now, I'm not saying there might not be a cost to them. Maybe there is, but we haven't seen it yet, and it's not evident in the hard evidence, all right? So all these people out there saying, oh, artificial sweeteners are gonna kill you, and they're bad for you, and all, they don't have hard evidence to back this up. Always ask, when you're looking at references for things, if somebody says, oh, a study showed, ask them what the study was. Get the reference. Like somebody said, well, this product has, I was in a chat with somebody online who was trying to sell me detox products from Isogenics. And I said, okay, first off, what specifically are the chemicals that this product is detoxing? What evidence do you have that these chemicals are in fact toxic? What evidence do you have that the chemicals you're claiming are toxic in the doses that humans would normally be exposed to? And finally, what evidence do you have that your particular product detoxes these chemicals in the dose that is provided in your product? They couldn't answer that. So please keep these three questions in mind. And I'm going to make this a little bit more practical for you as well by putting together some popular, don't know my own strength, some popular claims about health foods. And I'm not saying these claims are bogus. I'm just saying you need to take them in context. Let's take some specific health foods. Whole grains. There's a lot of research out there to show that as intake of whole grains goes up, that is associated with lower risk for cancer and heart disease. What a lot of people will misinterpret this is, well, I should just eat as many whole grains as I possibly can. Well, if you're eating, for example, 2,000 calories a day and maintaining your weight, and now you throw 5 servings of whole grains on top of that, and now you're eating 2,500 calories a day, and you're gaining fat, you're actually less healthy. What we're talking about is taking some of the carbohydrate of your diet that is refined, processed, replacing it with whole grains. So that would be that number one question, compared to what? Same thing with something like nuts. Nuts have been shown with lower rates of cancer, okay? But you can't just start eating, people hear, oh, nuts are good for heart health, or nuts are good for this, and so just start eating more nuts. And they won't account for the calories in them. And if you don't account for the calories in them, nuts aren't magic. Now, if you're replacing some of the other fats in your diet with fats from nuts, then maybe you're getting some cardioprotective benefits. But if you're just adding more nuts on top of your normal diet, you're consuming more calories, you're going to gain more body fat, it's actually less healthy for you. So same thing, this kind of goes in line with PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids. Polyunsaturated fatty acids have shown to have a cardioprotective effect and a lower incidence of cancer with higher intakes of PUFAs. But this is only if you're replacing it from something else. So for example, if you replace your saturated fatty acids with polyunsaturated fatty acids, you get better health outcomes. You're not going to get those health benefits by just overeating polyunsaturated fatty acids, because you gain body fat. When you gain body fat, your insulin sensitivity goes down. If you're just adding polyunsaturated fatty acids and you're not accounting for them in your calories, you're not replacing something with them, then you're actually making the problem worse, because higher levels of body fat are associated with greater incidence of cardiovascular disease and cancer. So it's always about what you're replacing with. Nothing is a magic superfood. There is no food. It does not exist. There is no food where you can just eat it indiscriminately and not account for the caloric value. Now, some foods are so low in calories that in all practicality, you probably don't have to account for the calories. Something like celery, which has about 5 calories of metabolizable energy per 100 grams. I mean, are you gonna get fat overeating celery? Probably not. To get 500 calories from celery, you'd have to eat about 10 kilos of it. So could you in theory? Yes. Is that going to happen in practice? Probably not. But again, it's not what we call a calorie negative food. They do not exist. It does not exist. So you always have to ask, okay, if you want to get the health benefits from something like nuts, well then maybe you're replacing 20 grams of your daily fat intake from, say, saturated fats, beef, cheeses, eggs, that sort of thing, with polyunsaturated fats. Now, people will argue that saturated fats aren't that bad for you, and that research has been overblown. And what we do know is saturated fats aren't as bad for you as we once thought they were. But they don't have cardioprotective effects. So they're not protective at minimum. At worst, they seem to have a little bit of a negative impact. Polyunsaturated fats are protective, but only if you replace something else with them. So keep in mind, it's always about what you're replacing with, all right? If we're just throwing a bunch of whole grains and nuts on top of what we eat, if we're just throwing a bunch of whole grains and nuts on top of what we already eat and not accounting for them in calories, you're gonna be less healthy. But if you're replacing some of your refined grains or processed grains or sugar with whole grains, and you're replacing some of your saturated fats, those sorts of things, with calories from nuts, and you're equating for those calories, then you're going to get some of those protective benefits. All right, guys, if you liked the video, smash that like button, subscribe, go buy some of my shit, and hope you all are having a great holiday season. Catch you next time.